Up first is Hank McCoy's clone, Henry. Everybody has a clone in the Marvel Universe. If you don't, you have one coming, or assume you're just not important enough. Beast's clone, Henry Philip McCoy, no Hank for simplicity's sake, debuted this year in January in X-Force 48. Beast is in his evil era right now. He got his blue claws on a bit too much power and has lost the plot a little. He betrayed everyone and created a bunch of clones of himself to help his research along. There was a battle with Wolverine and almost all of Beast's clones were destroyed, except of course Henry. X-Force leader Sage secretly saved Henry and kept him hidden away until he was needed. Beast somehow got worse, and X-Force was like, it's time, the only thing that can handle Beast is Beast. So they downloaded Beast's backup in Cerebro from a few years ago when he was still a good guy. Henry is a little scared at first. I cannot blame him for that. He finds out what the real Beast is doing and his world is rocked. He finds Wonder Man and the pair go after Hank. They find him with a black hole gun underwater because he is trying to suck Arakko into a black hole for safekeeping. Why didn't I think of that? Hank and Henry fight. Wolverine also ends up joining in because he's everywhere. Throughout this fight, Henry is trying to convince Hank to be a better person, and it eventually works. The black hole gun was already hot to go, so Hank sacrificed himself and was sent away by his own machine. Then Henry moved in with Wonder Man, which could mean nothing. Since this Beast is a clone with almost all of Beast's memories, we can only assume he has all of Beast's power and intellect too. Thank you so much to the person that was like, you know what we need? Space Spider-Man, because we did need Space Spider-Man. I like to have fun, why not? Persephone Parker is Star Spider. She is also the coolest and I love her suit. She is from Earth 1978 and debuted in Edge of Spider-Verse 3 in April. She lives in the space station Bronx because that's where her family is from. She is on the station because she is working as an apprentice to Professor Osborn as they study quantum engineering. Persephone is quite sneaky. She is secretly dating Osborn's daughter and also secretly is a space superhero. She utilizes the spiders on the ship, but they are not actual spiders. They are nanobots that use a special tech. They are what form Persephone's cool outfit. Spider stands for Sanitation, Planning, Integrated Defense and Engineering Robots. Star Spider's biggest fight so far was against Octavius and the Kree army that were trying to invade the station. And speaking of Octavius, I can't believe they made Doc Ock scarier than he already is. As Doc Ock, he is creepy in a way only a deranged man with tentacles coming out of his back can be, but in the Space Spider-Verse story, those tentacles are organic, like mouths, and they have teeth. He's also purple and has bug eyes, but I got the shock of my life reading further, and I come to see that he actually just has like a blue octopus attached to his back, like a parasitic backpack. The tentacles are pretty useful in a fight, I will admit. In addition to the teeth, they can also grab with their claws. Octavius nearly wins the fight, but he ends up breaking Star Spider's arm. But she is able to defeat him thanks to the nano spider bots. Octavius ends up disappearing before Star Spider can get the final hit in, but he promises they will meet again. This next character is so unbelievably cute, I can't take it. His name is Walpurgis, and he's Agatha Harkness's cat's kitten. So Agatha's cat Ebony had a kitten named Walpurgis. Agatha wanted to recruit Brielle Brooks as an apprentice due to her talent, but she refused. No hard feelings. Agatha had maybe the perfect response and gifted Brielle Walpurgis. This is my dream scenario. Not much is known about the kitten other than it is most likely a magic kitten and it's purple and it's cute. The kitten debuted in Marvel's Voices Infinity Comic 96 in April. We have another spider kid in the house, but this one is less fun. Boy Spider dropped in February of this year in Spider-Boy 4. He was a clone of Spider-Boy, designed to be a bit more of like the monster side of him. Spider-Boy has a monster form, but Boy Spider is in that monster form all the time. He was created by Madame Monstrosity. She's also a recent debut from August of last year, and she does a lot of genetic research inspired by the High Evolutionary, so you can kind of guess her vibe. She let this evil boy spider clone loose around the city with absolutely no morals built into that body. He started ruining lives really quick, and specifically ruining Spider-Boy's life and reputation in the city. Boy Spider ends up finding Spider-Man, Miles as Spider-Man, Spider-Man, and the two fight. Eventually, Spider-Boy and Peter show up, and Spider-Boy is able to have a heart-to-heart with his clone. The clone relaxes and goes home. That makes it sound like really tame. I promise there was drama, but also this is so new that I don't want to spoil the twist ending quite yet. Boy Spider has a more threatening look to him. Spider-Boy is just kind of like this cute kid in this cute little costume running around the city. Boy Spider has multiple eyes, spider legs on his back, pinchers, claws, a furry patch on his back. He's just a scarier kid overall. Boy Spider shows that he has pretty much every power Spider-Boy has, including a venomous bite and the ability to speak in a spider language. The first comic in a Miss Marvel Mutant Menace gave us the gift of a new villain, hopefully later mutant, anti-hero, or even hero, the Planter. He looks like the mascot for Green Giant Green Beans, simply because his skin is green and he wears a cape of leaves. The Planter is a mutant on Earth 616, and he takes on the qualities of any plant he touches. He touches a rose, and he would grow thorns. The Planter decides to use his abilities to rob jewelry stores across Jersey City, because that is a victimless crime, because jewelry stores have insurance, at least that's what the Planter thinks. The first big use of his power that we see is him making a getaway by making a big helicopter seed grow out of his back. It worked. It's hinted that the Planter has the potential to join the good side, but the comics are still coming out, so we will have to wait and see. New demigod villain just dropped in February's Miles Morales Spider-Man 17. Zip Zephyr is a menace drenched in the sweat of Theseus and has an enchanted bag that blows air, and that's him. I wish I was kidding, but I'm not. As far as I'm aware, Zip was kind of like the intro villain for a comic. He's there for a good time, not a long time. Miles, Miss Marvel, and Shift were fighting this guy in Brooklyn. We get thrown into the middle of the fight, pretty much, so it's unclear why Zip is doing all of this. Personally, I think for fun. Zip is probably from ancient Greece because he says he bathed in the sweat of Theseus, which makes him really slippery, which makes him really fast. He is also too slippery for webs to stick to him. The other thing Zip has going for him is his bag. It blows powerful bursts of air. I think Miles summed up everyone's feelings about this when he said, "A bag of wind? What is even going on right now?" Zip gets KO'd by Shift and presumably arrested. No amount of Theseus' sweat is going to help him slip out of that one. You can tell Marvel writers were having fun when they created the Circus of Crime. The Circus of Crime debuted in January in Doctor Strange 11. There are 4 people in this circus. They are all goofy. Up first is our Ring Mistress. Ring Mistress takes after her father, Ring Master. Their thing is they wear purple and green and commit the majority of their crimes by hypnotizing people using the device in their top hat, then robbing them. This Circus of Crime had plans to go when no Circus of Crime had gone before and make the hypnosis device massive in a big Ferris wheel. Ring Mistress has rounded out her circus with all the performer types that one would want to see. We have an acrobat named Gymnasty. Think of like an average skilled acrobat. She's that, but with the drive to crush you. Then we have Stefano Stiletto. He is a knife thrower. And then finally we have the strongman of the group with the most incredible name, Chief Beef. He used science to create the ultimate bulking routine and diet, so he is very, very strong. The circus is so funny to look at, and I'm glad we got another version of it. Nefil, also maybe known as Frozen Charlotte, is Lucifer's wife. She debuted in Incredible Hulk 9 in February. She is one of those characters that has really good intentions, but the worst possible way of executing them. She wants to make sure good people, innocent people, are protected from the world, but also from demons and bad entities and eventually her own husband Lucifer in the underworld. She wants to make sure innocent souls were protected. She did do that, I guess. What she does is take these people's souls and trap them in vessels designed to outlive the human body so the soul never has to go to the underworld. The vessels, they look like these little statues, so she traps people against their will in these action figures. Right idea, wrong methods. When Lucifer failed to beat God, he was exiled from heaven and his wife was too. Lucifer went to the underworld, but Charlotte chose to hide out on Earth, which resulted in her being hunted by angels and devils for thousands of years. I am sorry to say, but she does have the look of someone who has been on the run and married to the devil. She is literally skin and bones and 4 stories tall minimum with spikes on her. She wears a veil over her face. She can't appear as a human, typically an old woman. That's how she finds her victims. And you can tell she's going devil mode when her eyes white out. She did end up fighting the Hulk, and that fight caught the attention of Lucifer, who then took his wife away. But she was happy to go with him. She is capable of some level of energy blasts, and she has wings and all the powers that come with being a divine and also demonic being, so she's pretty cool. Earth-66 has been around for almost 2 years now. It started as a one-off Earth, but they keep popping in every once in a while, which is nice because this Earth is the Spider-Man but make them dinosaurs Earth. I like to see what Spider-Rex is up to because he is very cool. This year in May, they introduced a new villain for Spider-Rex, Lizard. An actual lizard, not a man in a suit this time. When Spider-Rex was saving the day once, he stepped on Lizard's tail and ripped it off. From that point forward, Lizard decided Spider-Rex would pay. Spider-Rex got his powers from a rock that merges 2 life forms when they make contact. Lizard planned to use a small piece of this rock to come into contact with Spider-Rex and then get his tail back. However, it went so wrong, he ended up touching a bunch of other animals first, eventually becoming an ape, piranha, capybara, turtle, pterodactyl, brachiosaurus, crocodile monster mix. Truly, it could not have gone worse for him. He does end up super powerful, which is like the bright side here, I guess. He uses the rock to turn Spider-Rex's girlfriend into a human, and humans are ugly in this world. It ends with MJ and Lizard Monster making contact with each other, and MJ turns back to normal, and Lizard becomes an ugly human named Kurt. And that's how humanity was started.
Number 10. The Builders. The Builders are a recent addition of the Marvel Rogues Gallery, only recently approaching their 10th year of existence in the comics, which makes them sound old, but really relative to comic book history, they're still pretty new, because Marvel Comics I think has been going on for like 80 years. Whoa! The Builders are a race of beings who claim to have created most of the known worlds in the universe, seeding worlds and influencing the development of civilizations for eons. They are also said to be a perfect race of beings, and when the multiverse appears to be dying as a result of incursions, they take it upon themselves to clean up the mess by wiping out complete worlds and empires, which puts them at odds with the heroes of Earth during the Infinity crossover event.
Number 9. The Black Winter. Ready to be slightly confused? Good. So the Marvel multiverse rebirths itself whenever it gets destroyed. Right now the multiverse is currently in its 8th version. Everything prior to the most recent Secret Wars and the incursions and the battle world and all that took place in the 7th version. Before that came to be, there was, get this, the 6th version. And when that version was destroyed, only one being survived. That would be the character who became Galactus. Well, now we know how the 6th cosmos was destroyed, and ooh, it's scary. The 6th cosmos was actually consumed by an entity called the Black Winter, essentially a living storm of destruction and entropy on a multiversal scale, like Galactus but for universes. Kind of. When the Black Winter ate the 6th cosmos, it allowed Galen, Galactus' real name, to live on into the 7th cosmos, and serve as its herald. Now, funnily enough, Galactus mostly ignored his heralding duties until the day the Black Winter showed up in the 7th cosmos in 2019. Galactus turned to Thor for help, but the two were unable to cooperate, and Thor wound up slaying Galactus, something the Black Winter prophesied would actually happen. Then Thor turned the corpse of Galactus into a power cosmic explosion and blew up the Black Winter. But before it went away, it showed Thor how he will perish at the hands of Thanos wielding an Infinity Stone encrusted Mjolnir. So now we have that to look forward to.
Number 8. Mr. Misery. Mr. Misery is a Doctor Strange villain that was actually created by Doctor Strange himself. Some people create their own villains. Oof. Some people are their own villains. Ah. Mr. Misery was a creature that embodied all the pain and misery that Strange had suffered from using magic during his time as Sorcerer Supreme. The beast was also commonly referred to as the Thing in the Cellar. At least, well, that's what it was originally referred to as. We'll get to that in a second. The Thing in the Cellar was released when all magic was threatened during the attack of the technological army known as Empirical. physical. Mr. Misery is actually the name the creature took for itself after Doctor Strange was forced to reckon with it following its accidental release. Strange freed the creature by depositing his suffering and pain instead into the people that he had saved, dividing it up so that each only carried a small piece of it within them. These people were also willing to do so as they had been saved by Strange in the past. So they were like, yo, Strange is my guy, I'll take a little bit of pain for you, no problem. Even after being freed, Mr. Misery continued to crave the pain and suffering of others, which is, why he took the name Mr. Misery and became a villain. Or they, it. It's kind of like a blob.
Number 7. Horticulture. Ever since I learned about this group, I will take any opportunity to talk about them. Horticulture is a group of 4 older women between the ages of 64 to 81 who are all expert botanists. They are Augusta Brones, Lily Lamus, Edith Scutch, and Opal Vedivere. And their goal is simple. Sort of. Essentially, they want to bring Earth back to a more pristine time. A time when it had about 7 billion less people on it. Yes, these ladies want to basically exterminate most of the Earth's human population and bring plants back to the forefront, and specifically flowers, which is kind of a lovely idea, sort of. This goal brings them into conflict with the X-Men in 2019's X-Men number 3, because the nation of Krakoa, that the mutants call home, have been mass producing these flowers with different bio and tech purposes, and these ladies would like to use them for their villainous goals. Beyond biological modifications believed to have been made to themselves, the women of Horticulture are experts at manipulating the environment to suit their extinction agenda. And they're also computer programmers, selling software to the anti-mutant group Orchis to monitor Krakoan gateways. So, now you know.
Number 6. Cordyceps Jones. Although he might not be as new as some of the other villains mentioned here, Cordyceps Jones is still a relatively new villain, if you've been out of comics for the last few years at least. He first appeared back in 2017 in Rocket issue number 4 and was created by Al Ewing and Adam Gorham. Cordyceps Jones is known for having a salacious reputation across the cosmos. He's a 30,000-year-old fungal parasite who, due to his longevity, has made an intergalactic fortune and is known for owning many successful casinos across the cosmos. Recently, he appeared in the X-Men series where he seems to be threatening the existence of Earth, setting up a bet for fun to see who can be the first to wipe it out. Cause that's what you do when you're a rich fungal parasite and you've been around for too long. That's what happens, you're like, gotta make some bets.
Number 5. The Sinister Adaptoid. Okay, so the Super Adaptoid ain't no kind of new villain either, but an Adaptoid that takes on the abilities and likeness of all the members of the Sinister Six, that's certainly something new. In Amazing Spider-Man number 6 from 2022, which also happens to mark Amazing Spider-Man number 900 in legacy numbering, a second and improved version of the Living Brain emerges as the story's primary antagonist on Peter Parker's birthday. His main goal? Trying to find out who Spider-Man is. To that end, he kidnapped all of Spider-Man's most frequently deadly foes, the Sinister Six, and created a Super Adaptoid with them. It's like 25 feet tall, strong, fast, zappy, honor-obsessed, 8-legged, mysterious, and it likes to quote some of the Six's lines. Spider-Man ends up having to team up with the captured 6 villains to fight the Adaptoid, but it's actually the villains' inability to properly work together that makes the Adaptoid malfunction and destroy itself. It's kind of funny how that works. As for the Living Brain, he ends up switching sides when Spider-Man refuses to let the 6 destroy it, and saves the day before revealing it actually already knows Peter's real name. Kinda weird.
Number 4. Orchis. Orchis is the entire villainous organization that first appeared in House of X issue number 1, back when Dawn of X was just starting up and it was all fresh and new and we were like, a new mutant thing and it's so good, and now we're like, please don't ever end, but it's probably gonna end soon, so I'll just go into the closet and cry forever. Don't worry about it. Orchis is an anti-mutant organization that is pro-human, and as such is all about the advancement of AI, such as Nimrod and Sentinels, to help protect humanity against the growing mutant threat. I feel like there's gonna be some people in the comments who are gonna say, actually, Nimrod is technically a Sentinel, and you're right, but also, don't worry about it. Orchis sees mutant evolution as a threat to humanity's existence, but little do they know, the AI they're creating is likely to serve as an even greater threat to humanity's existence in the future, based on everything that we've seen and every alternate universe we've ever explored where that has continued. Many have joined Orchis since we were first introduced to them, with even a few mutants betraying their own kind to join their ranks.
Number 3. Uranos. Okay, technically this guy actually appeared in What If number 24 in September of 1980, but 1. He looks completely different, 2. He wasn't doing anything until now, and 3. He's cool, so I don't really care. Uranos the Undying is Thanos' grand uncle and one of the deadliest beings in the Marvel Universe. Uranos, like every Eternal, was created by the Celestials 1 million years ago, but he believed the Eternals best fulfilled their purpose if they exterminated both the deviants and the humans, all life outside the universe, and imprisoned the Celestials. Luckily, his brothers Kronos and Oceanus disagreed, plunging the Eternals into civil war. Now, he ultimately lost that war and was captured by his brothers and became the first Eternal to be imprisoned within the Exclusion, where he stayed for over 500,000 years because of the failsafe he imposed upon the machine. That failsafe being that if he dies, his greatest celestial designed weapons will be unleashed. Recently, mutants have been revealed to be related to deviants, making the X-Men enemies to the Eternals, and the Eternal Druid called on Uranos for help in Axe Judgment Day #1. And to show how powerful he is, in a matter of 20 minutes, Uranos eradicated Cable, Magneto, and David Haller, otherwise known as Legion, along with a bunch of other very powerful mutants. He's scary.
Number 2, Annihilation. Annihilation was at first a mysterious villain who appeared in the X-books. Eventually, however, we learned that Annihilation was actually a demonic and possessive force which had taken over Genesis, who was forced to take up the golden helm of Annihilation after defeating the villain. It was basically a losing battle either way, as if Genesis lost, she would have died, but in winning, she was forced to take up the helm and then lead the demonic forces of Amenth, which had so long plagued Arakko and its people. So it's like a if you win, you lose, and if you lose, you lose. Genesis turned out as well to be the long-lost wife of Apocalypse. Apocalypse had left his wife, children, and people eons ago in an attempt to help saving Arakko from the Amenthi forces that threatened to one day overtake it. In the end, Apocalypse, with the assistance of Saturnine, helped to free Genesis from the hold of Annihilation, and the helm was turned into a staff that was less influential on its host and more easily used as a tool instead of, possessing the will of whomever possessed it. Annihilation had their first appearance in X-Men issue number 12 from 2020.
Number 1. Monolith. This likely villain is so new it was hard to even find information about her. First appearing in July of 2022, which is last month unless you're in the future, in Hulk number 9, Monolith is the very strong, big pink queen of Hulk Planet. Hulk Planet is set to be the title of the new Hulk story arc taking place after Hulk's whole Titan Hulk thing and the fight with Thor that just took place. The planet itself is situated right next to a gamma-emitting star, so if you haven't guessed yet, Hulk Planet is indeed a planet covered in Hulks. Banner, piloting the Starship Hulk, finds the Hulk planet while on a mission for isolation. Instead, he meets Monolith, who offers him a place among the other Gamma beings where Hulk can exist in peace. But of course, there seems to be more to Monolith than meets the eye, and we kind of just have to wait until we can find out more information. It is likely safe to assume that as the leader of a planet of Gamma mutates, Monolith is very strong and very powerful. Will Hulk find peace? That's not usually how it goes, but only time will tell.
Number 10. Starling. Starling is the girlfriend of Miles Morales' Spider-Man. At least, at the time of this recording, I'm pretty sure she is. Starling is Tiana Toombs, the granddaughter of Adrian Toombs, who is the villain known as the Vulture. Tiana's father is Adrian's son, Frankie, and her mother is Lenora. While she often sports wings in homage to her grandfather, she isn't a villain like he is more often known for being. In fact, Adrian actually helped Tiana after her father abandoned her and her mother, and then later after her mother tragically died in surgery. Adrian had always brought money to Lenora to help support her and his granddaughter, and after Lenora's death, he actually offered to become Tiana's guardian, which she accepted. He was also the one who gave Tiana her suit and actually inspired her to become the hero she is today, despite he himself usually being known as a villain. I kinda love when legacy characters go the opposite way of any other characters they're known as being descendants of. Starling made her first appearance back in Saladin Ahmed's run on Miles Morales' Spider-Man from 2019 in issue number 5. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, you can also go check out our Top 10 Marvel playlist for even more good old Marvel content. Number 9. Somnus. Somnus was first introduced in a super cute story that was featured in the 2021 Marvel Pride issue. In his origin story, we learn that Carlo Valentino is actually an old flame of Dawkins. They met in Canada in the 1960s in Toronto, Ontario. At the time, Carl was living a closeted life, both as a mutant, I believe, and also as a queer man. During a one-night stand, Carl used his powers while they slept to live an entire life out with Daken in their dreams together. His mutant powers basically allow him to manipulate and control the dreams of others, an Oniromancer, as we would say, which is how he was able to do this. Seemingly spooked by this experience, having lived a whole life with Carl in his dreams, only to wake up and find it had been just that, a very vivid dream, and that Daken was still as he was the day prior, after living a whole life overnight. Daken was sure to leave before Carl awoke. While the two never really talked after this, Daken seemingly never forgot Carl. After Carl passed on, presumably from old age, with Daken attending his funeral, Daken actually asked to have him resurrected, giving him a second chance to live the life that he always wanted, proudly, out of the closet, both in terms of his orientation and as a mutant. Carl took the name Somnus for himself, his mutant name, and would later join Kate Pryde's Marauders team. I also super duper love his design. His outfit is so good. Somnus is such a cool character. Number 8. Soldier Supreme. Soldier Supreme made his first appearance in Jason Aaron's run on Avengers, which started all the way back in 2018 and is still currently ongoing. Soldier Supreme would not make his first appearance until issue number 50 of the series, meaning that he appeared for the first time in the comics back in December of 2021. Soldier Supreme is a magical superhero from the 1940s who also would be trained by the Ancient One and become the leader of the Secret Invaders. Despite existing in the past in the comics, he would be introduced as a retcon character in the present, our present, during an adventure the Avengers had involving time travel. Soldier Supreme is Sebastian Zardos, possibly related to another Phoenix host who is also a Zardos, or perhaps even possibly distantly related to the adoptive family of Nightcrawler, who are also the Zardoses. Who knows? Sebastian was known to have descended from old powerful magic through the witches of Wundagore Mountain. Number 7. Moon Knight. No, not Mark Spector of Earth 616. Obviously, he has been around for some time and is not really new, making his first appearance back in the 70s in Werewolf by Night issue number 32. But you know who is new? The Moon Knight of Earth 818, a hero who first appeared in the 2021 volume of Avengers Forever in issue number 1. This Moon Knight is known by the name of Mariama Spector. She appears at the end of that first issue where we learn she is part of the team and that an alternate Tony Stark as Ant-Man seems to lead. Tony of Earth 818 calls his team together after believing that something is shifting and that they might actually stand a chance at saving the whole world. Or whatever. Mariama would appear within the first issues of this run of Avengers Forever, and would also appear in some of the later issues in the series too. The first issue of the 2021 Avengers Forever series was released in December of 2021. Number 6. Tosin Oduye. Tosin Oduye is a hero that made his first debut in the current Black Panther series by John Ridley. He made his first appearance in issue number 3 of this 2022 series. He is a hero of Wakanda, but is actually greatly separated from Wakanda in some ways as well. He belongs to the Marube tribe, who chose to separate from the mainland of Wakanda and basically isolate themselves as they rejected the ideas of many who believed that vibranium should be bended to their own will and used like a tool. Instead, his people focused on finding a more natural approach to vibranium, finding natural ways to temper it, and focusing on flowing with vibranium as opposed to using it simply to do whatever they felt vibranium should be used to do. The Marube cover themselves in vibranium tattoos, and this is how they are given their powers. The Marube had seen much war come and go during the generations, and their goal was and is to basically stand as Wakanda's protectors when the time comes. Following the transition from a monarchy to a democracy, Tosin was one of the heroes who rose up to protect the new Prime Minister of Wakanda, declaring himself as Tosin, who fights for the one true Wakanda. Number 5. Amass. Amass is one of the mutants who is new despite actually being really old in terms of the history in the comics. In fact, possibly one of the oldest mutants we've ever seen. They made their first appearance in Marauders issue number 4, the current volume by Steve Orlando, not the previous run by Jerry Dugan. This is volume 2 we are talking about here, which started in 2022. Amass is actually one of my favorite new mutants when it comes to their power set and their potential. They can combine living beings into one, amassing and unifying them into one entity. For mutants that join together, this is exceptionally cool, as all the mutants' powers will be contained within one being, making them, while combined, extremely powerful. And I believe that if Amass were to do this with regular superheroes that were non-mutant superheroes, that would also be true, which is pretty cool. You could also combine non-mutant superheroes and probably mutants. The potential's crazy. If they have the right power sets, as we learn in the current Marauders series, while combined, the mutants can even use their powers together to do things like time travel. Pretty wild, right? Number 4. Thea. Thea is another mutant who comes from the very first mutant civilization, which actually existed way in the past, but basically were all wiped out. Their history hidden away for millennia by the Shi'ar, or more specifically, the secret was kept by the Shi'ar's secret society known as the Kin Crimson, who are basically supposed to keep some of the worst Shi'ar secrets secret to like protect the Shi'ar, protect the crown. Thea was one of the mutants from the Threshold, the name for their ancient mutant civilization, who had their consciousness, memories, and genetic data stored within a codex, with the hopes that one day someone would retrieve that and be able to free those locked safely within it, bringing them back into the living physical plane. This group was known as the Threshold 3 and included Amass and Crave as well. Thea herself is a time manipulator, with her mutant power being chronokinesis. She and Tempo seem to develop a closer connection early on in the Marauder series. Thea first appears in the same issue that Amass first appeared in, issue number 4. Number 3. Monolith. Gosh, I love Monolith's design. Monolith seems to be an ally to the Hulk. Currently, the Hulk in his own series, titled simply Hulk, is flying around space, but is actually the mind of Bruce Banner in the body of the Hulk, with Bruce having taken control and modified Hulk's body to turn him into like a spaceship, basically. Having always wanted to live as a scientist and explore the world and go on cool space adventures, Bruce struggles to see a home for himself on Earth after everything he has done, and so he decides to actually just take control of the Hulk and go to outer space. A sort of self-imposed exile, if you will, but one where he gets to like actually do what he wants to do as a scientist. While on his space adventures, he runs into a kind of planet Hulk that seems to be perfect for people like him. It seems exiled Hulks, who were dubbed abominations in an alternate reality that they hail from, seem to have come to this planet and ended up settling here, all becoming super strong and smart over time. Initially they were basically exiled there, but then they basically just decided to create their own civilization. Monolith is their ruler, being the queen of this seemingly Hulk planet. Honestly, her existence is one of my favorite things about this entire series. She first appears in issue number 9 of the current Hulk series, volume number 5 from 2022. And while, yeah, we don't really know if she's like specifically a superhero yet, I feel like she's leaning that way. Number 2. Rek-Rap. Who is Rek-Rap? Well, he very recently made his first appearance at Amazing Spider-Man issue number 17, where that question is, of course, answered. Rek-Rap is a demon from Limbo who admires Spider-Man, looking up to him. He originally takes the name of Parker Man for himself. He ends up becoming an ally and supporting character in the current Amazing Spider-Man story, Dark Web. In issue number 17, Parker saved him from another demon who basically wanted to beat up the latter named Parker Man. This act inspires him to want to be a hero like Parker Peach Man, and so he sets out to try and get superpowers. In the end, he instead gets a symbiote and ends up taking a new name for himself after he is told that the demon army doesn't really need another Parker and that he had it backwards. After all, they weren't looking for more heroes, they were actually looking for more villains. The name this demon settles on is of course Rek-Rap, because it is Parker backwards. Get it? Because they were like, you got it all backwards, and he was like, alright, I'll have it backwards then. Number 1. Red Goblin. While Normie Osborn, grandson of Norman Osborn and son of Harry Osborn and Liz Allen, is a character who has been around since the 1980s and even became a villainous version of Carnage and the Goblin combined, known as the Goblin Child back in 2018. He also recently underwent a new change, becoming known as Red Goblin himself. At first, I was worried that Norman would actually be returning to this mantle when this was teased, the return of Red Goblin, and almost instantly, of course, then returning to the side of villainy after only recently becoming good in the comics. Goodness. But it looks like, at least in terms of Red Goblin's return and that character's identity, I was wrong, which I'm happy about. Red Goblin instead returned to us in Venom issue number 15 from volume 5, the 2022 run, as Normie Osborn. Normie was given a symbiote that is the result of the combination of both the Carnage symbiote and the anti-Venom symbiote. While in his Red Goblin guise, he seems to be acting solely as a hero who basically aims to help his friend Dylan Brock, aka currently known as Codex, save his father Eddie Brock, currently the King in Black in his Bedlam phase, and formerly known as the anti-hero, and I would say now full-fledged hero, Venom.
Marvel is full of all kinds of teams, both good and bad, extraordinary and subtle, popular and not so popular. Today, I think it's high time we shine a spotlight on our favorite teams of losers and rebels who should be treated better. Now, when we say that these teams deserve better, there really isn't a better example than the Harvesters. After the events of the superhuman civil war, Iron Man created the 50-State Initiative. This was essentially an initiative to set up government-funded superhero teams throughout each of the United States. Some of these teams were already established groups of heroes, but for some states, completely new groups composed of local heroes were formed. The Sunflower State, Kansas, gained its team in the form of the Harvesters. This new team was made up of pretty strange heroes that we hadn't seen before. Topeka, who led the team, was basically just a super soldier. Then there was Pioneer, who had the power of the plains, as she put it. Sunflower, who was literally a human sunflower who got stronger under direct sunlight and appeared to have a high degree of durability. There was Meadowlark, who could fly and sing to hypnotize people. And then, of course, there was Grainbelt, whose body was literally made of grain that he could control. Why did they deserve better? Well, this team's only claim to fame came when they faced off against a zombie clone of the hero Hyperion, who is basically the Marvel equivalent of Superman, and he utterly destroyed each member of this team. They did not stand a single chance. Only Pioneer just barely made it out alive by raising up an entire herd of undead cattle and trampling the zombie Hyperion, who then succumbed to mad cow disease, and I wish I made that up. Now, most of you nerds have heard about the Skrulls. This alien race has been a nuisance in Marvel Comics ever since their first appearance in Fantastic Four #2. The Skrull members who fought the Four at this time ended up hypnotized into believing they were actually cows by Reed Richards, and they shapeshifted into and were stuck as cows. What I'm sure Reed did not anticipate is that these Skrull cows ended up finding themselves in a butcher and turned into beef. This Skrull beef was then consumed by regular old Earthlings. Now, while a good majority of people did not survive the Skrull cow meat, a select few did, and had the Skrull's adaptable DNA code transferred into their human cells, resulting in a condition called Skrullivoria-induced Skrullophobia. The infected individuals gained the ability to shapeshift like a Skrull, but also developed an intense irrational fear and hatred of the Skrull, and they came together to form the aptly named Skrull Kill Crew. Fueled by their irrational impulses to destroy the Skrull, they helped prevent the Skrulls from attacking other people, but they even faced off against other villains like Baron von Strucker. It's just a really unfortunate way to gain a superpower. Now, X-Force is the awesome Black Ops X-Men related team with characters like Domino and Cable and Cannonball and Wolverine and Warpath, and it's awesome. But for a short little while, it was decidedly not awesome. In the year 2000, X-Force got cancelled and rebranded into what eventually would become X-Statix. This team isn't exactly one of the premier mutant teams in the world, and that's putting it lightly. The original team was made up of the mutants Zeitgeist, who has the power of Super Puke, La Nuit with Dark Force powers, Battering Ram, who was a big purple goat looking man, Plasm, who had liquidy water powers, Gin Genie, who could create earthquakes depending on how much she drank, and Sluck, who was basically a squid man. But all of those original members, minus 3 of them who I didn't mention, and Sluck, who was blown up by a tank in South Africa, all got completely decimated in spectacularly embarrassing fashion during a rescue mission to save a pop music boy band named Boys R Us. Turns out their demise was actually planned by the team's manager, coach, and its leader, Zeitgeist, because they thought a team with a constantly changing roster and high body count would gain them fan interest. The team managed to go on with pretty horrible results. There have been 28 members of X-Statix who have passed away over their history, with only 9 surviving. 9. Okay, so we have X-Statix, we have X-Force, we have the X-Men of course, and we have a whole handful of other X-branded teams, but some mutants aren't considered presentable to the outside world because whatever their mutation is, it has been deemed either gross or terrifying by the wider Marvel human society, or they are mutants who are just bitter about being persecuted for being mutants. This group banded together, named themselves the Morlocks, and headed down into the Morlock tunnels beneath New York City. Already, without anything happening to them other than their mutations, these characters have it rough and deserve better. But then, to add flame to the fire, the Morlocks undergo tragedy after tragedy after tragedy, with one of the worst being the event known as the Mutant Massacre, where Mr. Sinister and the Mutant Gambit put together a group of villainous characters and led them into the tunnels to commit, well, a massacre. And it was all because another villain, Dark Beast, created some of these Morlocks, and Mr. Sinister didn't like that. Sometimes it takes the smallest of things to bring people together, and while that may sound like an extremely beautiful sentiment, I'm saying it in relation to the villainous team known as the Headmen, who it seems came together because each of their powers revolves around their heads in one way or another, and it's honestly kind of unsettling in my opinion. Putting their heads together, figuratively, not literally, these scientists sought out world domination, bringing them into conflict with the Defenders, She-Hulk, and Spider-Man. The quartet consisted of Arthur Nagin, their leader, who had his head transplanted onto the body of a gorilla, Ruby Thursday, who replaced her own head with an organic computer capable of changing shape, Gerald Morgan, aka Shrunken Bones, who accidentally shrank his own skeleton, including his skull, so he basically just had really baggy skin, and Chandu the Mystic's head had been transplanted by Nagin onto a number of different bodies throughout his time, making him quite the versatile little guy. Not gonna lie. The Champions of Los Angeles were the first West Coast based superhuman team. They formed like all great superhero teams do, with several heroes happening to just meet by chance against a great threat. In this case, that threat took the form of the Greek god of death, Pluto. The group consisted of two former X-Men, Angel and Iceman, the Greek god of strength, Hercules, who I swear is super underappreciated, Johnny Blaze, the original Ghost Rider, and the Russian spy Black Widow, who led the team. After defeating Pluto, the Champions of Los Angeles, or just the Champions, decided to stick together as a team. Warren Worthington III, aka Angel, was the wealth behind the group, and with his money they bought their own Quinjet and named it the Champ Jet, which I find hilarious because over time the members of this team started to become embarrassed by the entire idea of the team as a whole. Both Iceman and Angel called it an embarrassment and a nightmare because they had no idea what they were doing. But still, they had a few more adventures working with X-Force, and they had some additions to the roster with Black Goliath, who aided the team in a scientific aspect, and another Russian female hero, Darkstar, who was originally there to capture Black Widow but ended up changing sides instead. I'm gonna be honest, I kinda love the lineup of this team. I'd read it if they came back. Now you remember how the Headmen all came together based on their head-related powers? Well, I'll do you one better. How about the Death Throws, whose powers and names all have something to do with commonly throwing stuff. The leader, ringleader, threw together teammates Bombshell, Knick-Knack, Oddball, Tenpin, and Throwdown into a group that honestly works really well together, juggling their various different throwing instruments between each other. They worked so well together, in fact, that they were even hired to and succeeded in breaking the villain Crossfire out of prison. However, once they had taken Crossfire to their HQ, they discovered that Crossfire was broke. His assets had all been impounded, and he had lost all of his useful connections. These guys did battle with characters like Captain America, Crossfire, Hawkeye, and even Loki of all people, who stopped the group from robbing the Big Top Casino in Las Vegas. Their Marvel wiki even lists their origins as, and I quote, a joint effort to perform criminal and mercenary acts while using juggling expertise. I honestly can't even believe this group of villains exists and that they haven't been able to get Bullseye into their ranks. What the heck's up with that? Okay, of all the teams on this list, I think that Horticulture may be my favorite. For starters, they look so cool, but then you find out that it's actually just a bunch of older women between the ages of 64 to 81 who are all expert botanists and want to bring Earth back to a more pristine time when it had about 7 billion less people on it, and it was ruled by plant life. I just love how they use their regular names, and the names just kinda suit their ages and interests in plants. We got Augusta Bromes, Lily Lamus, Edith Scutch, and Opal Vetiver. Gosh! What a bunch of winners. But yes, that's right, these ladies want to basically exterminate most of the Earth's human population and bring plants back to the forefront, specifically flowers. This goal brings them into conflict with the X-Men in 2019's X-Men #3. Beyond biological modifications believed to have been made to themselves, the women of Horticulture are experts at manipulating the environment to suit their extinction agenda, and they're also computer programmers selling software to Orchis to monitor Krakoan gateways. They did get pretty handily walloped though, so Second to last, as part of kid-centric Star Comics, Marvel decided to release a team composed of of animal superheroes, which is cool. But the difference here is this team of animal heroes were cybernetically enhanced super intelligent animals with absolutely massive arsenals and awesome exoskeletons, which is much cooler. And they fought for the environment, which is even cooler. This team was made up of Boomer, a kangaroo, Lionheart, a lion, Soar/Slipstream, an eagle, Reckless, who was a bear, and Dr. Echo/Surfstreak, who was a dolphin. Does it sound kind of ridiculous? Sure, but it is awesome. This team was co-created by Multicore, spearheaded by Dr. Randall Pierce, and it was all part of Weapons 2, which itself was the second project after Weapon 1. Who would have thought? Also known as Project Rebirth, also known as the project that created Captain America. Now some of you may know that these projects were part of a bigger thing called Weapons Plus, who would eventually go on to create Man-Thing, Luke Cage, Nuke, Typhoid Mary, Phantom X, the Stepford Cuckoos, and of course, Wolverine. So most people know that they aren't exactly a good group of people. While their original series was cancelled after only a few issues in Wolverine and Captain America Weapons Plus #1, those two heroes investigated an abandoned Weapons Plus site where they found the team kept in hibernation tanks full of liquid. The bear, Reckless, was freed from his container but attacked the duo, resulting in his passing. And last up today, first ever introduced in 1989's West Coast Avengers Volume 2 number 46, the Great Lake Avengers formed after Mr. Immortal put out an ad in the local personals seeking men and women of action to join forces and form a team of super friends. This managed to catch the attention of Avengers members Hawkeye and Mockingbird. In order to help them out, the Great Lakes Avengers were trained by the duo and the rest was history. The team is made up of pretty much Z-list heroes, with the main lineup usually consisting of Mr. Immortal, Doorman, Big Bertha, and Flatman. Naturally, as a sort of running joke throughout Marvel Comics since their introduction, the team goes up against some of the zaniest villains and situations I have ever seen, and they don't do particularly well. But I'll be darned if I don't have a soft spot for this team. The funny thing about most joke characters and teams is that they almost always end up actually doing some pretty extraordinary things from time to time.
Sleepwalker is his name, but there is a possibility that it actually isn't. He is part of the Sleepwalker race. They're kind of like dream police. They protect beings that are sleeping from the evil entities that want to invade their head. Sleepwalker was tracking one of these beings into the mind of Rick Sheridan, but the villain tricked him into getting trapped inside Rick's mind. Sleepwalker's story is really similar to Venom's story. Human gets attached to alien, and they have to learn to live with each other. The difference here is Sleepwalker can't separate from his host. In fact, the only time he was able to exist outside of his host was when Rick was sleeping. If Rick was awake, Sleepwalker was just kind of in the back of his mind. Rick did eventually figure out that he had an alien attached to him, and he didn't take it very well. He figured that if he never slept, the alien would never come out, and that went just as well as you think. He did eventually just pass out due to exhaustion. At a certain point, the pair come to realize that they aren't getting out of this and form a hero-host bond, and Sleepwalker is able to exist when his host is awake. Sleepwalker's powers include warp gaze. He twists and alters the shape of physical objects, including people. Thankfully, he is a good guy and refuses to do that to a person because it would cause way too much mental trauma. I think Sleepwalker should get either screen time or just even more panel time because he is a proven asset. Not only is he a great fighter, he can also enhance mental powers just by being near the person with them. That means Professor X, Jean Grey, Doctor Strange. You cannot tell me Sleepwalker wouldn't be an excellent addition to a super team. Plus, apparently, according to Rick, his voice sounds like Vincent Price, the horror star of the golden age of Hollywood and the guy who did the Thriller monologue. As you can see, I am very passionate about my guy. Now switching over to the DC hero that I will fight for day and night until I die, the Heckler. I can't even begin to explain how upset I am that his series was cancelled early. That's pain, but it ended on a cliffhanger and I was just starting to get interested, and that is double pain. The Heckler debuted in the 90s and he does have 90s comic energy to him. He disappeared for a long time after his series was cancelled at 6 issues. His appearances after that were just like cameos, but then in 2022, DC released One Star Squadron. That series was a team of D-list heroes created for hero-for-hire business. So you could get a superhero for like your office Christmas party or a birthday. Heckler was part of this business, but he looked very different. I am grateful the character was brought back, but I miss the original. The original Heckler was drawn in a very specific style. His comic was really interesting to look at. It was very experimental though, so I get DC not wanting to do that again. I really liked the original comics because they were a parody of hero comics. The creators wanted to make the Bugs Bunny of the hero world, so Heckler had no actual powers. His power was be annoying until the person defeats themselves. Maybe I love him because I can relate, I don't know. Heckler deserves better than to just fade into obscurity. Dazzler is one underrated hero who is just starting to get the major recognition she deserves. She was originally a known character, but then she had a brief period where she kind of fell off, but now she is back and shining brighter than ever. Marvel has been putting in the work on their end, putting her back in the pages and up on the screen, but I would argue a lot of Dazzler's recent mainstream fame has to do with Taylor Swift. Say what you will about Taylor Swift, but you cannot deny that her name holds power. Barely anyone outside of like nerd fandoms knew who Dazzler was, but then Taylor Swift might be playing her and suddenly Dazzler's the talk of the town, which she deserves. Dazzler is a pop star and she converts sound that reaches her body into light. The light can manifest as a blinding flash or a blast or lasers, holograms, mists, and like her name, dazzle people by making her body sparkle in a way that throws off someone's mind. Dazzler has many fans in the Marvel Universe, including Kitty Pryde, Juggernaut, and Colossus. She also has fans outside the Marvel Universe, including me and you. It's nice to see this underrated hero finally getting the love that she deserves. I am about to put up missing posters for this team because where did they go? Justicia is the Justice League, but for Mexico. Justicia is Spanish for justice, so it's pretty on the nose with that one. They first appeared in Suicide Squad, Most Wanted, El Diablo, and Amanda Waller 5 and 6 as the team. Then a few team members were in some Superman comics, and that's it. The team leader is El Dorado. He's Superman but Mexican, pretty much. He can fly, he's strong, he can teleport, and do minor telepathy. There are 3 other members on the team. Akrata, a skilled martial artist and acrobat capable of teleportation due to the Mayan artifact she wears. Then we have El Muerto, he's undead, which makes him hard to kill. Finally, we have Iman. He wears a suit of armor that gives him superior strength. There are connections between Justicia and the Justice League. El Muerto used to idolize Superman, and Iman received a scholarship from Wayne Enterprises. Iman and Batman also share very similar trauma. Each individual hero has had a handful of appearances. The team has had 2. I think that they are a neat team and they should get more chances to show off together. Lorna the Jungle Queen has been MIA for too long. It's time to bring her back and give her a slight writing redemption arc. Lorna, as a character, super interesting, pure of heart, strong, great role model. The comics she's in though, they contain some depictions of cultures that are not great and are very outdated. Her series is from the 50s. Lorna is very cool though, and I think Marvel could bring her back quite easily if they wanted to. Lorna is all about protecting her home. She lives in the African rainforests. She works with and saves the wildlife there from poachers. Lorna tries to never use guns while fighting because they might jam or break, but she can always rely on herself. If she did use a weapon, it was likely a spear because she trained with them a lot while growing up. It appears that Lorna doesn't have any supernatural abilities, she's just a really strong and smart woman. If the MCU or comics wanted to give her some spotlight, they could definitely bring her in using Wakanda, considering that both locations are in Africa. I know that Red Bee isn't everyone's favorite, but I can't get through explaining his story without laughing, and that makes him a winner in my books. Red Bee's thing is he fights using trained bees he keeps in his belt buckle. He apparently even has a favorite bee that is special. That bee is Michael. Michael can pick locks and sting multiple times. Red Bee isn't completely helpless without his bees. He is trained in acrobatics and hand-to-hand combat and law. I would like to share with y'all a fun fact from his wiki page. In his brief career in hit comics, which is just 24 issues, the Red Bee was hit in the head hard enough to knock him unconscious a minimum of 14 times. Were the bees really there, or was he just hit in the head too many times? The character was recently seen fighting alongside Peacemaker. I hope that with all the parodies and spin-offs DC has been greenlighting, Red Bee finds himself in there somewhere. Moving into the movies though, the MCU, I think the Eternals deserve better. The concept of the Eternals is so interesting. The characters and their histories are so cool. They had such an incredible cast, but the movie fell flat for a lot of viewers. It has a 47% on Rotten Tomatoes right now, which is literally a tragedy. I was really looking forward to them, and it's my personal opinion that Eternals should have been a show. One episode per member of the team to properly explore their backstory and emotional weight in the conflict, instead of trying to force all of that into 2 hours and 40 minutes. I know this is a controversial topic, not saying the movie was a dumpster fire, but I think a show would have suited the team better. I would love to hear if you agree with me or not, so let me know your thoughts in the comments. To the person though who did comment on one of our past videos that Captain Comic is always forgotten, I see you, I hear you, and today we will remember him together. Captain Comet is also known as Adam Blake, and he is a mutant for DC. When you hear mutant in the superhero context, most people think Marvel, but DC has some mutants too, Captain Comet being one of them. He was born way before his time, 100,000 years before, in fact. He is described as the first man of the future. The old Adam and the new version of Adam, they have very similar origin stories. When he was born, a comet flew across the sky, emitting radiation. The radiation triggered Adam's cells into multi-genetic cell growth, which caused him to develop mental powers. As he grew up, he realized he was not only mentally strong, but physically too. He was indestructible. Other powers of his include telepathy, teleportation, poison immunity, telekinesis, clairvoyance, photographic memory, and he can just read people really well, know how much of a fight they will put up, how they're feeling at any given moment. Truly, this guy is a powerhouse that I would love to see more of. Marvel has quite a few cowboy characters at varying degrees of popularity, but Jim Gardley seems to be at the bottom of the pyramid despite being Marvel's first cowboy. Many think it was Two Gun Kid, but it was actually Jim, better known as Masked Raider. There are a few reasons why Jim has faded away from the cowboy spotlight, but the big one was his series wasn't as long as other Marvel cowboys, and he was active in the 1930s and 40s. With the internet, you can find and read the stories now, but imagine trying to track down Marvel Comics Volume 1, Issue 1 without the internet. Impossible task. So poor Jim faded into obscurity. The Masked Raider got his name because he wore the Eternity Mask to hide his identity. The Eternity Mask is not a toy. It gives the user cosmic equality. Whoever wears it is automatically equal in power to whoever they might fight. There is a catch though, the user can't have evil intentions. The mask also leads heroes to where they are needed, sometimes preventing problems before they start. The Masked Raider inspired a secret society that formed using his message of fighting the lawless and bringing justice to the oppressed, so that's his legacy in the comics. It's a shame that a character that was the first Marvel cowboy and the wielder of a pretty major magical artifact is barely remembered. I just recently discovered someone called Diamond Jack, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about him since. He sounds like one of the most powerful heroes DC has ever created, and yet they haven't really done anything with him since his short run in the 40s. Diamond Jack was once just a guy. Then he met an old magician who gave him a magical diamond capable of making its user physically strong and mentally beyond all ordinary mortals. Jack got the diamond as long as he promised to help people, and it really is just that easy. You too can become a superhero just by talking to your local magician. As Jack is a pretty sturdy guy, but average, the ring is where it's at. It can transform objects like projectiles into flowers, weapons to candy. He turned a witch's magic book into a recipe book titled 1000 Ways to Cook Spinach, so clearly he has a sense of humor. The ring can also create convincing illusions or even conjure a brand new physical object from thin air, like when he gave himself a sword or that time he created a parachute. Jack is shown to be pretty much unstoppable, so I would love to see him brought back and see if he would still be that powerful today, even when placed next to some of DC's current most powerful beings.
Not all Avengers are given the same treatment as Iron Man or Captain America.
But that doesn't mean we don't love them and want to see them rise to that level.
It's somewhat weird to think about the fact that this person on our list was an Avenger, but He was. And honestly, he was kind of great on the team, even developing a relationship with Janet during his time there. That's right, we're talking about Alex Summers, aka the mutant hero Havoc. Havoc has had a complicated relationship with heroics throughout his life. Initially, he wanted nothing to do with being a hero, but found himself dragged into the superhero lifestyle anyway, due to him being a mutant and constantly getting tangled up in stories involving the X-Men. However, I feel like being on the Avengers actually suits him better as a character, also allowing him to get out from under his brother Scott's very long shadow. Havoc is very much a middle child, and I feel like often gets stuck as a result of this, so it was nice to see him come into his own. In general, I feel like Havoc simply doesn't get a lot to do in the comics. He was with Maddie during Dark X-Men recently and was heavily featured in Hellions, but in both of those stories he kind of feels like a side character somewhat. And in Hellions we basically were just dealing with all of Alex's trauma, which, you know, while important and I did love, don't get me wrong, I would still just like to see Alex when he's in his power a little bit more. And lately that's been missing somewhat from the comics with his character, I think.
Leave the saving of the world to the men? Silverclaw doesn't think so. Silverclaw is the daughter of mortal Jamie Santiago and a volcano goddess. The goddess gave Silverclaw to her father as a gift. She was to be the protector of his village. As Silverclaw was growing up, her powers began to show. Those powers are kinda like shape-shifting, specifically regarding animals native to South American jungles and forests. She doesn't need to fully transform her body into an animal to take on the characteristics of it. She assumes a form that combines her human appearance with the animals. She's done this with jaguars, monkeys, pumas, and more. Silverclaw was headed to America to meet up with Jarvis, oddly enough. She was his sponsor child. Her flight was hijacked, and the only way to ensure the other passengers' safety was if she agreed to help the bad guys. Eventually, the Avengers show up, defeat everybody, Silverclaw explains her side of the story, and the Avengers let her join so she can help them track down the hijackers. They thwarted the bad guys, and Silverclaw remained on the team.
Honestly, I just really love Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp, and lately I feel like we haven't gotten enough of her. Unlike some of the others on our list though, Janet has at least gotten her dues in the past. I mean, she is also one of the original Avengers, but in the modern comics landscape, I feel like both Jan and her adopted, sort of in a weird way, stepdaughter, Nadia Van Dyne, have both fallen by the wayside.
We know Hawkeye, he's clearly doing well if his hit TV show and mainstream fame is anything to go by, but he had to learn all his skills from somebody. One of his teachers was Swordsman. He met Hawkeye while working in the circus. Swordsman's circus act was shockingly sword and knife based, and when Hawkeye finished his sword training, they were often a duo. Swordsman is an Avenger now, but he wasn't always a stellar citizen. He has robbed people and left people for dead and gotten himself banned from multiple countries and originally joined the Avengers as a double agent, but he eventually had a change of heart due to his heart. During a period where Swordsman is taking a required break from the Avengers, he ends up working for this gangster, and that's where he meets the eventual love of his life, Mantis. Mantis said she can fix him, and she did. Now Swordsman has the self-respect needed to 100% leave crime behind, and the pair rejoined the Avengers. It went well, but it didn't end well. He died. It was super tragic. Mantis yells "Darling," it's a moment. He comes back in the form of a sentient tree eventually, then dies again, then is revived again during the Chaos War, then died again. He deserves better than that. All that character development for what? He also has a really cool sword. It can shoot energy rays.
I personally love Monica a lot. She's just a strong member of the Avengers who honestly very rarely gets enough love in the comics. However, it is important to note that there are pockets here and there for us Monica fans, but I do wish we just got more of her in general, especially as a leader, which I think Monica is pretty great at doing. Monica Rambeau was a leader of the Avengers for a while. Monica Rambeau was a leader of the Avengers for a while in the 80s, but her time in that role was pretty short-lived due to her being tricked and manipulated into giving up leadership by Dr. Druid after she was fatally wounded in a battle. Not only did Monica Rambeau lose her role as leader, but she was also zapped of her powers at this time because that happened in the confrontation that also wounded her, prompting her to give up her leadership role. So she was all around severely nerfed at that time, and also mainly because Dr. Druid was working to betray his teammates this all happened. Monica would also be known as the first woman to use the mantle of Captain Marvel. That's right, a lot of people think it's Carol Danvers, but it was actually Monica. But after leaving the Avengers would lose that name as well and go on to become Photon instead. Now she had to give up her name because Captain Marvel's son appeared kinda out of the blue in the comics and wanted to use the name for himself. Fortunately, Monica would go on to lead the Next Wave team later on in her career, but she would also later find out that she had been manipulated into this role by Beyond. And even after fighting back against the Beyond Corporation, who is admittedly evil, she would have her personality altered due to this traumatic experience. So yeah, it's been a very mixed bag for Monica throughout her history, sadly. A lot of ups, a lot of downs, and a lot of the things that I love to read her in, she also kinda gets messed up in.
One thing about me, I love Sleepwalker. I think he is so neat, and trust and believe if I can get him on a list, I will. The MCU judges books by their cover because at first, multiple Avengers think Sleepwalker is a villain. That is not the case. He is a good guy. Sleepwalker is not just his name, but also his job. The Mindscape is a dimension that is in all sentient things, including you and I. It has beings in it whose sole purpose is to be evil and make people go insane by invading their mind. The Sleepwalkers stop this from happening and protect the minds of innocents. One of these sleepwalkers was tricked by a longtime enemy into entering the mind of Rick Sheridan. They fought in the dream, but when the villain escaped, our hero was trapped and bonded to Rick. Eventually, Rick learned of his sleepwalker buddy, and the two became co-inhibitors of Rick's mind. The sleepwalker used his time on Earth to fight the evil entities from the Mindscape that materialized in the physical world. He was a member of Operation Lightning Storm, and being a part of this initiative when Quiet Man started causing problems, Sleepwalker got recruited to the Avengers to help out.
Quasar never gets enough love in my opinion. I'm not sure if it's because he has a similar vibe to Captain Marvel, or even at times in a weird way, not really power related, but Wonder Man. And both Marvel and Simon are just put above Wendell for some reason. But ever since I read more about Quasar in Dazzler, which I highly recommend you check out if you haven't already, I became more intrigued by his character, and then as a result disappointed when I learned he wasn't really as prominently featured today as some other heroes are, for some reason. Granted, Quasar, while niche, has still been in hundreds of issues. Still, I wish he had his own book today, or at least appeared more regularly in someone else's solo series, or was just like on a team. Honestly, I miss the days of the old Dazzler comic. I loved him as a supporting character there. I just want to relive those days. Also bring the Dazzler series back, it's so good.
The rootinest tootinest cowboy in the Wild Wild West, Two Gun Kid. He isn't technically a cowboy, but he sure does look and act like one. Personally, I love the musical Oklahoma and by extension the cowboy aesthetic, so to me, this hero absolutely deserves the world. He is not supercharged, he is just a guy that wanted to be a hero. He trained until he was an expert gunfighter and horseback rider. He's also a master of the lasso, iconic. He is from the 1870s, he did all his training in the 1870s and grew very, very famous. Think like Annie Oakley, Billy the Kid. So how did he end up in the modern era? When the Avengers were fighting time-traveling thorn in their side, Kang the Conqueror, they ended up conveniently in the same time as Two Gun. Two Gun was obviously interested in the people from the future and helped them fight. He did good and was offered a reserve spot in the 20th century, which worked out well. He could explore everything the modern world had to offer and only help the Avengers when absolutely necessary. Getting homesick for the homestead, he returned to his era eventually, but continued to help the Avengers whenever they visited. Two Gun Kid is part of the reason heroes like Hawkeye and Angel came to be. Hawkeye was inspired by Two Gun's heroism and took up the style when he became a hero, and Angel, before he was Angel, was Two Gun's doctor in his old age. Two Gun made sure to tell him about the heroes of the future, and those stories ended up inspiring Angel to become Angel. Two Gun Kid had an impact.
Look, I saw Madam Web, and it was an experience, to put it lightly. Of course, for this list, we're talking about Julia Carpenter's Madam Web though, not Cassandra, but to be honest, I wasn't too happy with how she was featured in the film either. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of why it was bad here because that would be honestly a whole other video. In fact, I've actually done two on that subject on my own channel, but trust me when I say it's a disaster of a film, okay? Just trust me. It's just so bad, and it feels like it undermines the powerful and much beloved character of Julia Carpenter, as well as honestly everyone else, but we're talking about Julia. Julia was the second woman to take up the Spider-Woman mantle after Jessica Drew, and it was during her time as Spider-Woman that she came to have a few adventures with the main Avengers team, later going on to fully join the West Coast Avengers. And I just think she's great. She doesn't get enough praise.
Hi, before I say this state name, I would like to clarify again, I'm Canadian, so please don't make fun of me, I will say it wrong. The man from Massachusetts, Dane Whitman, the Black Knight. The Black Knight is a mantle that gets passed down, so there have been a bunch, and not always good guys. The Black Knight, before Dane, his uncle, was a villain and requested that Dane not be. Good news, Dane wasn't, he joined the Avengers. He got on the Avengers' radar by telling them Magneto captured 2 of their teammates. He doesn't join right away, he spends some time at his family's estate first, a castle. You learn pretty quick that the Black Knight has a very specific medieval aesthetic. The Black Knight travels by Pegasus, and he has this really cool weapon called the Ebony Blade. The Ebony Blade is a double-edged sword, but seriously, it gives the wielder basically immunity and can cut through anything. But it will slowly corrupt its user, that's the downside. Black Knight officially joined the Avengers after defeating Kang together, but he had been an ally to them long before that. He was a great asset to the team. He wasn't just a great fighter with epic transportation, he was also incredibly intelligent. Black Knight might finally be getting the mainstream fame he deserves. He was in the MCU movie Eternals, played by Kit Harington. He wasn't like a major character, but at the end we see him gain possession of the Ebony Blade, so it's pretty clear it's him. And with Kit Harington in the role, it's definitely something to look forward to, even if we don't know when we'll see the character again on screen.